An atom that came from the tap had electrons all over her map. But in her interstices lurked a much worse disease. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, that's one of the greatest couplets of all limerick lore. But in her interstices, what are the interstices of an atom? The nucleus. What's wrong with it? It can be radioactive, okay? So there are many ways of finishing that. That's the disease that it would have, right? I'm trying to appeal to you that you can do physics this way, even though when I passed the exam out, I didn't get anything like that. All right, so that refers to the radioactive decay of the nucleus. Let's try another one. Let's see. Said a slow little neutron, ere fission, don't speak of me with such derision. I may have no charge and not be so large, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, that refers to the nuclear chain reaction, right? Neutron can be pretty powerful. Okay, let's see if we got more. An electron that was quite debonair spied a positron up on the stair. Da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and finished him off in midair. That refers to pair annihilation, of course. Now, maybe I should tell you the sort of legitimate answers I might have expected. On this one, for example, you have to remember that the electron and the positron circle about their common center of mass. That's called a positronium atom. This for a very short time, before mutual annihilation. So some of the couplets I had in mind, for example, in the middle there, starting the death dance, she put him in a trance and finished him off in midair. Or, she needed no tact, for unlikes attract. Or, you get part credit for this. She meant him no harm, but turned on her charm and finished him off. Charm doesn't deal with the electron, does it? I have some theorists here. But you'd get partial credit for that. Okay. Well, of course, when I passed out the exam, within 5 minutes, the class became totally disorderly. And a colleague of mine, Hill Huntington, turned in accurate but dull answers. And, of course, the exam never counted. Well, Dave and I now exchange limericks. When he retired from Pitt in 1975, can you imagine that's almost 25 years ago? Well, I couldn't make his retirement dinner, so I wrote a letter that they would read at his retirement. I said, naturally, Mildred and I are unhappy at missing such a pleasant way to renew old friendships with others, and this would have given me a golden opportunity to roast Dave. You know, I have all my students convinced that Halliday doesn't really exist. After all, they're all too young to know about all those books that Dave wrote before I came to Pitt. And I don't dare invite him to come and give a colloquium talk here to shatter the illusion that I foster. An author named Bob, a knave, invented a co-author named Dave. Said he, it's a shame to share all that fame, but think of the taxes I save. So in this period when nobody trusts anybody's morality anyhow, I found that most people really believed there was no Halliday. And he never showed up at meetings anyhow, and certainly not at the APT. And then when he started to, he always came incognito so he could get free books from all the other publishers. So nobody even knew he existed. Then I put a PS, a text by Halliday and Resnick was purchased by David O. Selznick to make into movies for all of those boobies who studied from Sears and Zemansky. Mark Zemansky would have loved that. He had a marvelous sense of humor. I remember I told him that I was afraid to look at his book when I was writing because I had taught from it, and I was already too influenced by him. And he said, there's no problem in copying from a book, Bob. You just got to make sure you don't copy mistakes. So he was a generous guy. Well, Dave wrote me back a letter. I'd like to respond to your first limerick with, they say that Bob won Ersted's prize. It really was me in disguise, for I dreamed up Bob to convince all the mob the arrangement is just otherwise. And then he's good. Of John Wiley and Sons we all hear, but their corporate title is unclear. In the battle of proxies, with the help of some doxies, I took over in March of last year. Well, we used to play a game somewhere in the chapter, I guess, on magnetism, I snuck something in about electrons, protons, pions, muons, and so-ons. And I don't know who detected that little humorous flickering in there, but when Dave caught it, he immediately sent notice to the publisher, change it to etc. He didn't like that humor. And when I noticed that it was changed to etc., I sent the notice in to change it back to and so on. And we kept playing this game. Well, since I'm on this limerick theme, let me tell you one more thing. In the third edition of Fundamentals of Physics, Dave and I actually changed the terminology in the book because we wanted to get a limerick in. Bob Greenler of the Optical Society of America, marvelous lecturer, wonderful guy. He's in optics, okay? He showed me this limerick. To a politician who would reveal an image with public appeal, said his optical friend, in my view, I contend, if it's upright, it's virtual and not real. Well, I wanted to use that, but instead of upright, we had erect for the image, erect and inverted. So I said, the hell with it. Let's put the limerick in. We'll change all erects to upright. And we did. And somebody told me that several textbooks followed right on in the next edition and changed the erect to upright, not knowing that it came from our wanting to get a limerick in the book. I don't know what authority we carried then. But my wife reminded me that we were prescient because we would have had to drop erect in anyhow once Viagra became available. Well, Dave snuck one over on me, really, by putting in the index a reference to James Joyce. He's a member of the Joyce fan club. They meet on Bloomsday in New York once a year. And he has a lot of Joyce memorabilia, a collection that turned out to be very valuable, that I think he gave as a gift to Pitt. Anyhow, what student is going to look up James Joyce in a physics book? Well, you might look in the index and see Joule, and next to it you see James Joyce, and you say, my God, how come? And you go back to the page, and you can't find him there. Okay, here's a letter. Dear Professors Halliday and Resnick, I discovered Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker and Anna Livia Plurabelle on pages 929, 930 of Physics for students of science and engineering. It was very pleasant to find them there. Thank you. And Dave writes back to Mr. Jacobs, congratulations on discovering the Joyce reference in our book. I'm a bit of a Joyce enthusiast and a collector, and I put them in because I thought that Joyce would have appreciated it. As far as I know, you're the only person who has noticed it. I hope you made a good grade in your course. Gee, he could have had a better line than that. But anyhow, then a student at RPI comes up and says, I saw that Joyce reference and I know what it is. I said, wait, Halliday put that in. Please, write to him. So I wrote to Halliday, and now I read you Halliday's reply. Dear Mr. Kogitz, thank you for your letter about the reference to Joyce in our book. Let me say at once that you're only the second person who has written to me about this matter since the book was published. The reference, alas, is not to Ulysses, but to the even more formidable Finnegan's Wake. In this latter book, 2 sets of 3 initials each are used constantly throughout the text. They are HCE, which stands for Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, and ALP, which stands for Anna Livia Plurabelle. They are combinations of letters that would be recognized immediately by anyone who has any acquaintance with Finnegan's Wake at all. And I took a puckish delight in using them in the figures and equations referring to reflection and refraction. We had the angle ALP and the angle HCE. My choice was also influenced by the fact that Joyce had a peculiar interest in light, possibly because of his poor eyesight, and he once referred to the reflections and refractions of language which occur in his works. You didn't realize how literate our book is, did you? Please don't give up on Ulysses. The essential point is not to try to understand every sentence. Here comes the teacher out. Not to try to understand every sentence, but to read it for rhythm and to bear in mind that it is possibly the most humorous book ever written.